This episode is brought to you by Simply Eloped. Because wedding planning can feel like too much, Simply Eloped makes it easy and keeps it deeply human. They've planned over 14,000 personalized ceremonies in 37 stunning U.S. destinations, coordinating every detail with real care. Okay, some other destinations. New Orleans. Duh. Big brass band. Highly recommend. Did that at my wedding. Why not go to the heart of where you can find the best brass bands? Big Sur. Ooh. Windswept wedding photos off the Pacific. This one, though, this is definitely my jam. Sedona, Arizona. The new age capital of the known universe. Perfect place to get married if you're a little witchy like myself. You just bring your marriage license, and they take care of the rest. Your love deserves simplicity. Visit simplyeloped.com. That's simplyeloped.com. Today on CityCast Denver. City Council is set to vote tonight on one of the biggest stories of the year. The National Women's Soccer League chose Denver for an expansion franchise back in January, and the local ownership group have been trying to get the city on board to pitch in for a new stadium. A vote on $50 million in public funding to buy some land near Broadway and I-25 and build support infrastructure has already been delayed. And the team just last week delivered to council a signed agreement with neighbors to put some money back into the community. But will that be enough to get council on board for a subsidy? For a deeper look at the question of public funding for sports stadiums, I spoke earlier this year with CU Denver professor Jeff Profiter, who helped us understand what these deals are really about. Today is Monday, December 22nd. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Jeff Profiter, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you for having me.
So we've heard a lot of big promises from the owners of this team, and the city has produced some analysis showing a potential $2.2 billion economic impact. That sounds pretty good. What do you think?
I mean, it sounds pretty good if you don't think too hard about it. But I think a high-level qualification in that city report from the folks at Finance is that they are very explicit that they don't consider any substitution effects. And that's incredibly noteworthy because nearly all, not all, but nearly all of the economic impact will be through substitution channels.
What does that mean?
So substitution channels. There's a difference between gross and net impacts. And if you were to measure gross impacts, you would be ignoring what is the activity people would have done had this thing not occurred. Would they just be sitting idly by on their couch, not spending any money? Would they be sitting idly by, not being employed? And the answer is overwhelmingly no. People have a budget for discretionary spending, for entertainment, and they're going to spend that budget whether there's a team here or not. And that money is going to go to support other businesses, other industries. What I'm saying is you might end up going to a movie instead of saying buy a ticket to a game on a Friday night or something like that. But then there's also this idea of economic impact, right? That's a concept. That's not a metric. So I hear 2.2 billion and I know what economic impact means, but does the average layperson or the average city council member know what it means? Or do they just see a big number and they go, oh man, that must be great?
It sounds really good, that money coming to Denver.
I mean, the thing is, it's not money. What economic impact measure is the flow of money.
Okay.
It's an estimate of how much money is changing hands, not who is receiving how much of what. And that distributional part is the important part. Because if I said, hey, this thing is going to generate a gazillion dollars in economic impact, but you're not going to see any of it at all. Like not a cent is going to show up in your wallet or your bank account. Do you care all of a sudden? I mean, you shouldn't. You're like, well, you're going to give away taxpayer resources? It's not actually going to flow to taxpayers, or some very, very, very tiny amount is going to flow to taxpayers.
Well, let's talk about that because the owners are asking Denver taxpayers for $70 million to support the construction of the stadium. If it's obvious
academics like you, why do you think Denver's mayor and council are even considering spending that kind of money?
Tricky question. It's tricky because normally, if we're talking like normal sports, when I say normal,
Yeah,
I'm,
what
I'm
do you
saying, I mean the normal debates around sports primarily focus on the political incentives. The political incentives are things like um, lawmakers will receive certain individual benefits to themselves, not to their constituents necessarily, but to themselves, of things like access to the stadium, photo ops, they'll get jerseys with their names on it, right? And those are individual incentives. Granted, they're people in a position of power, but do they use that power and authority to benefit themselves first and constituents second, or constituents first and themselves second, right? You have to prioritize. You can, of course, benefit both, but when they conflict, as is often the case with subsidies, you have to choose who you're going to prioritize. And so the standard economic explanation for why do we keep seeing this behavior from lawmakers is that they're prioritizing their individual political benefits over the broader aggregate well-being of their constituents. And it makes sense within sort of an economic framework because the benefits to the individual lawmaker making a decision are concentrated, but the costs are dispersed. You're taking $70 million, and that's a lowball number. That doesn't include certain costs. But you're taking that $70 million and you're spreading it across all Denver residents. Once you take that $70 million and spread it across 750,000 people, the average cost to any particular resident is so small, it would cost you more to fight that policy than to just acquiesce, unless you're fighting it on principle, which is what people would have to do. So lawmakers can take advantage of this absence of a whole lot of frustration and anger, interpret it as, hey, there's no pushback, or there's very little pushback, when really there is. It's just you've dispersed this cost of, if you forced only the people within, say, 10 feet of the stadium to carry that entire 70 million cost, you'd have those people within that very tight radius would be very upset, and they would let you know, because now the cost is more concentrated instead of dispersed.
So like lawmakers would just say, like, we know people aren't going to be that upset about it either way. We're just signing off on this. Like, I'm just trying to think about, because like you're saying, we wouldn't all get if we didn't use that $70 million for this, we wouldn't all get a check for whatever. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter to voters. I mean, I'm also just thinking about sometimes these questions can go to the lawmakers and sometimes it's sent to the voters.
Sure. Yeah, and the representative versus direct democracy, this comes up a lot in sports subsidy debates. And the data are incredibly clear. This is one of the sets of data that I collect. If you go the legislative route, if you're a team owner, you go the representative democracy route, your passage rate is almost 100%.
So if they go directly to lawmakers, what they're bringing to them usually is like signed off.
Yes, 95% passage rate. And this is national. Now, if you were to compare that to direct democracy, the data I have from 1980 to now, and I'm still filling that out back to the 1900s, early 1900s, but from 80 to now, 72 referenda have been put to voters across the country, and it's 50-50. Whether they pass or not. So if you go the direct democracy route as a team, you don't want to. You want to go the legislative route because it's guaranteed, all but guaranteed. If you go the direct democracy route, it's only because you're forced to by state law that says you have to give voter, which is why a lot of the time you don't get what happened with the Bronco Stadium or Coors Field, where you had the sales taxes. It would be spread out to like 7 different counties, and then people have to vote on it though because it's a tax increase under Tabor. Whereas in this case, there is none of that. So you can construct the subsidy, design it in a way that doesn't require voter approval.
So I want to talk about the ripple effects that boosters talk about. And I wonder what you think about this quote from a letter from some business leaders who sent it to council in support of the stadium. They wrote, Denver has faced inflection points before. Following the energy bust of the 1980s, leaders made bold moves, investing in the convention center, building a new airport, and constructing Coors Field in the heart of downtown. Mayor Federico Peña's vision proved correct. People came, businesses followed, and Lodo became an economic engine.
As an academic, and probably much less as an academic and just more as sort of a critical thinker, is in philosophy, or there's this post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is just a very fancy way of saying after this, therefore because of this, that just because two things happen in time, one after the other, doesn't mean the first thing caused the second thing. There are plenty of neighborhood revitalizations that happened without stadiums. There are plenty of cities that have undergone revitalization without ever hosting major league sports. And this happened a lot in the last 20 years where people wanted to move downtown away from suburbs, right? And so contemporaneous with this, okay, change in housing demand is younger folks wanted to come live in downtown. This is all pre-COVID. Come and live in downtown areas. If you're a housing developer, your job is to know the market. If you can get ahead and say, okay, let's get access to some developable land in downtown areas where the next generation of home buyers are going to want to live, they're going to want to just have social life downtown, then, and sometimes maybe that stadium is a way to sell it, to a way to access land, right? Because lawmakers need something sexy to attach their names to, and they're going to be willing to do that with sports, not necessarily without sports. And so you could find a developer and give them the land for $1, sell them the land for $1, and you would have gotten even more thriving downtown development without a stadium, right? That's 13 acres of lands being used for a stadium that only gets, has the lights on, 30-40% of a calendar year?
But I can see folks saying, but Coors Field was that catalyst for the rest of that development. If we didn't have Coors Field, then maybe the land around it wouldn't have been as appealing to developers, or wouldn't it have been, would we have created the thing that people wanted to go back downtown for? That's a big conversation right now, is why people are going back downtown.
Before Coors Field was built, there was a plan to have a freeway go through downtown, and they scuttled that. And what they did instead was they built 2 overpasses, that freeway, which those overpasses existed, and they connect downtown to the west side. Those 2 bridges had far more to do with revitalizing downtown. Why? Because it made it so much easier to get downtown than a stadium. Now, it's great for the stadium because if people have to struggle to cross the freeway from the west side to downtown, they're not going to go to the stadium. So this was great impression, right? This was foresight planning on the part of the city and the Rockies to take advantage of something that was going to happen anyways, and then after the fact take credit for it, as though they did it. Well, no, the seeds were sown for this downtown revitalization primarily from building these 2 overpasses and giving greater access to downtown. But to say that, well, we built the stadium and therefore we were able to repurpose the train yards into the logic just the only way we built large condos, the only way we built Union Station and revitalized Union Station is because we built Coors Stadium. That just defies logic, that there was no way we could have ever revitalized Union Station if we didn't spend billions of dollars on a stadium. That just makes no sense in the fact that anyone could believe that we are on 2 different planets.
Let's move on to this other piece of this particular situation that we haven't talked about, which is the fact that if this gets built, it's a dedicated stadium for women's sports. And that's a new thing here in Colorado. Does the fact that it's women's sports change the dynamic at all for you as an academic?
Not on the economic side, right? Because as a consumer, $1 is $1, whether you're spending it on male sports or female sports. But it definitely changes the political side. I think that this thing passes for gender equity reasons, not for economic reasons. And if you're a team owner, do you care why it passes or do you care that it passes? From a gender equity standpoint, there's no economic debate. I'm a creature of consistency. I don't really care how people feel. I just care that they're consistent in how they feel. And gender seems to be one of these things that, at least for me personally, my moral compass, that you should be treating everyone the same. And so if you're going to support hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies for guy sports, you should be supporting $100 million in subsidies for female sports. So I think that has the most traction, at least for me. The economic arguments aren't any different though, right? Like which is why at least if you're trying to neuter economic arguments or counter arguments, you don't lead with the economics. You're always, always, always going to fail on the economic grounds for giving subsidies here. But on the gender equity grounds, that's where the strength is. And that's where it makes the most amount of sense to actually support this.
Yeah, because I would imagine you would see some intangible benefits for Denver if we were able to say, we have this dedicated, beautiful stadium for women's sports.
Sure. And it's not a question of, I think, yes, there are intangible benefits for both male and female sports in general, even for youth sports and minor league sports. It's not a question of whether or not these benefits exist. But again, we're going back into the sort of economic realm, and the economic policy analysis realm really says, okay, but you're getting these benefits, but at what cost, right? You're always looking, or always should be looking, at benefits versus costs. And are you overpaying for what you're receiving or not? And in the context of subsidies for sports teams, usually these debates get simplified into you should never subsidize sports. That's not really what economics says. What economics says, you shouldn't over subsidize sports. That is, if there are positive spillover benefits and of hosting a team. And what I mean by positive spillover benefit, I mean, you as a fan, you will pay the price to go see a team. But let's imagine that there is someone who never, ever pays for a ticket and therefore never sees the team. They never watch them on TV, or they never pay for a subscription to watch them on TV, but they still derive some happiness from the proximity to them. That is what we would call a positive spillover benefit. And this is where like civic pride might fall into this category. When we've gone out and we've quantified this amount for male pro sports, it's incredibly tiny. We're talking overall the equivalent of about $20 to $50 million a year over the life of a 30-year lease. But we're subsidizing at least male pro sports to the tunes of billions of dollars. But again, we're back to the gender equity side is, hell, we've been over subsidizing guy sports to the tunes of billions of dollars. For decades. Now, the other element here, though, is all the other NWSL teams, they play in MLS stadiums. And we have an MLS stadium.
Yeah.
So, what's better than paying $70 million is paying $0 million and having the team go negotiate with Kroenke and play in Dick's Sporting Goods Park. The stadium's older. It's not like they got something brand new. Only the Current in Kansas City plays in a dedicated NWSL-only stadium, in part because the guys' MLS team is in Kansas. So it's in another state. It's on the other side of the river. That being said, they could have gone over there, but the land is owned by the Port of Kansas City, not Kansas City itself, the city of Kansas City. So the Port of Kansas City owned the land, and they were willing to deal, and so we have that. So that's slightly different than here, but it would be only the second team with a dedicated NWSL stadium. But again, in the same metro area, you already have one.
Yeah, something to brag about, though. I can see that. I think about when you come in on the train on DIA and Mayor Johnson says home of, the Avs and the Nuggets, like these teams that have won, like I could see we're adding that, like, and the one of two dedicated brand new, National Women's Soccer League stadiums right here in Colorado.
Sure. I mean, I can see the bragging point. I can't see why anyone would care. Like if I'm walking through an airport or if I'm on the train and I see it, I go, oh, that's interesting. And then that's about as much happiness or utility as well.
Yeah,
I probably get a little bit more as someone in this field. I spend way more time.
You think about it all the time.
Right? If the cynics and the critics who spend a lot of time thinking about these probably derive the most amount of happiness from these in a semi odd sort of way. But putting on your economic hat, it'd be like, okay, but at what cost? And am I getting more than what I'm paying for? And no.
So what if I was a council member or I'm the mayor and I'm about to make a vote on this proposal? What would you tell me?
I am not the sort of person to tell you how to feel. You would hear me say, however, you should get more complete information before you make a decision. That when you make a decision, you need to be thinking about a comprehensive list of benefits, comprehensive list of costs. Could you achieve your same policy goal at lower cost? And how could you do it? I would remind them that your job is to be a fiscal steward of taxpayer resources, and that means getting the most bang for your buck. So yeah, that would be my more general advice is get better information.
Jeff, thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to remind Denver Summit FC owner Rob Cohen that we'd love to have him on the show anytime. Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And hey, thanks to our new neighbor, Brittany B., who just joined our membership program. You can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later. Did you know CityCast Denver has a perks program? Every week, we're highlighting some standout deals from our favorite businesses in town to help you support local and save some money. It's a win-win. Here are some highlights from this week. Visit any Topo Designs retail store and mention this ad to receive 20% off your purchase. Some exclusions apply. But you can get this deal through February 1st, 2026. Or saddle up for an intergalactic adventure at the Adultiverse Space Rodeo on January 17th, where you can experience the worlds of Meow Wolf Denver transformed into a 21 and up psychedelic party. Use code GIDDYUP for $4.20 off an Adultiverse ticket. Offer available for redemption now through January 17th, 2026. Or check out Green Door. You can pre-order a curated cannabis box for your next Denver trip. Includes edibles, snacks, and local accessories, ready for pickup. No stress, no lines, just a better trip. Use code DenverPerk for $10 off any experience box. To see a full list of participating businesses, just visit denver.citycast.fm/perks. It's a great way to check out new restaurants, shops, and events in your city without breaking your budget. And I think that rules.